Good morning, this is Mona, and this is my Morning View, Summer Edition 2025, September 11th. That's a specific day. Okay, September 11th. Oh, maybe I should have done the Zealots today. And it is Thirsty Thinking Thursday. So, recently I have been working on getting something planned, pseudo-planned, for Thirsty Thinking Thursday, so that it's not just impromptu. It's something I've actually thought about, maybe even taken some notes, even though I can't read my writing, and just kind of put it together so that it's not just me going from, my memory of what's inside my head. And so, just a few notes. Most of them are repetitive on here. I'm waiting for the plane to go by so that once it's gone, I can actually start the lesson and hopefully no other noises will take place. All right. So today we're talking about the Essenes. Yeah, I should have been talking about the Zealots on September 11th versus the Essenes, but we'll just stick to what we have. Still waiting for the plane. All right, so the noise. All right, we're talking about the Essenes. Even though they were not specifically mentioned in the Bible, there were possible allusions to them being called something other than Essenes. And they were definitely a sect during biblical times. They were a sect during the times of Jesus, from about 100 BC to 70 AD. We all know what happened in 70 AD. The temple in Jerusalem was destroyed. The town of Karam, which was like a central point of the Essenes near the Dead Sea, was destroyed in about 68. So the temple was actually destroyed after that particular place, but there was a war, the first war with the Romans, and in that space of time is when they disappeared. Now, it's quite possible that many of them became Christians and moved on with the Christian movement. Again, in the Christians were being terrorized. I can't think of the word right now. Persecuted. They were persecuted and left Jerusalem and went to the outermost parts of the world. They went through Judea, Samaria, and outermost parts of the world. Okay, so it's quite possible many of them became Christians. We're going to talk about the things that are similar and shows an influence on both Jesus and John the Baptist. Now, there are some scholars, it's not, there's no evidence supporting it, but some of them believe that they were Essenes in the sense that they kind of studied under them, that they kind of, there was some heavy influence from the Essenes on their lives. Now, there is no evidence saying that they were. So we're not saying that they were. We're just saying that there was some influences. John the Baptist. Little seeds. I thought it was dog hair floating around. Little seeds. So anyways, we're going to talk about these little seeds floating around. Eventually, in the essence of the Essenes and the Christians. All right, so here we are, 100 BC to 70 CE. The name Essenes specifically means modest or humble or pious ones. And they had a certain belief system. And they followed it strictly. So the Essenes are considered, at least the leaders of the Essenes, were from the descendants of Zadok. I mentioned about them when I was talking about the Sadducees. Zadok was the times of David. Was it the Sadducees or the Pharisees? Yeah, I don't even remember. My mind. Okay, so we talked about it. you'll have to go onto YouTube. We'll do the commercial right now because this is a good spot to do the commercial. Okay, Facebook only allows these for 30 days. I've been doing these series on Thursdays for longer than 30 days. So in order for you to get the full series, you have to go over to YouTube. Different than my Facebook profile, it is Mona E. Harrison. Again, Mona E. Harrison on YouTube. You will see my white hair, my beautiful face, and you will know you are in the right spot where you will subscribe. Subscribe. It's right about there. And when you subscribe, you can go back and you can watch the Thirsty Thinking Thursdays concerning the Sadducees, the Pharisees, the scribes, the Essenes, and the Zealots. I haven't done the Zealots yet. You'll have to wait for tonight or tomorrow to watch this particular one on YouTube. But in the meantime, you can catch up on the previous ones. All right, that's my commercial. I'm sticking to it. Okay, so Zadok, he was mentioned in one of the other videos. He was a high priest in the days of David. And the Essenes leader was the teacher of the light. And he was said to be a descendant of Zadok. And they had an issue with the Hasmonean priests. And they felt that they were corrupt. And so they wanted to stick with the purity of Moses' law. And they weren't like the Sadducees where they didn't believe in the resurrection. They did believe in a resurrection. And they believed in prophecy. So they knew God interacted with them today, in their day. It wasn't a God said it and forget it mentality. It was more than that. They were mystical and aesthetic. Mystical meaning not magical, mystical. They studied the word intently and they embraced all that it had. They embraced the interaction. So, and with the aesthetic, they were bent on purity and the law and doing the right thing, doing the stuff that was required of them. They were prudent in their own self-discipline. They were I'm just trying to think of all the things that word really pertains to. That duty, and purity. And there's a few other words. You can always look up the word. So in this, they felt like the world was corrupt. And they wanted to be separate from the world. So they separated themselves. They isolated themselves. And they did some communal living. So the isolation wasn't, all by myself. No. They had a community of like-minded people. They separated themselves from the world, from the rest of the Jewish community, which was corrupt. They were corrupt by the priestly leaders of the day. They were corrupt by the Roman government, the Greek influence. They were corrupt by all this stuff. And they were like, we don't want any part of that. So they isolated themselves and separated themselves. And many of them lived in the town of Qumran, which is near the Dead Sea. And this is where the Dead Sea Scrolls were found. And it is said that they were the writers of the Dead Sea Scrolls. They were how do I say that? Preserving. They're preserving the word. They're preserving the history. They were preserving documents. And so they would put them, and then they would keep them into safety. And so that is why they were in the caves up near the Dead Sea. Hence the Dead Sea Scrolls. They were discovered back in like the 1930s or so by a young shepherd boy. He was up there looking for his sheep or his goats or whatever that he was tending, and he stumbled upon the cave, and he came down right away and let people know. And so therefore there were discoveries with the Dead Sea Scrolls that forever kind of changed our history of the Bible and of the time. And so, did we have the Bible before that? Sure we did. Sure we did. But it solidified a lot of things that were in a timely capsule, you know. So basically they were time capsules. They weren't meant to be time capsules, I don't think. They were there to preserve. So, so that is the significance that the Essenes have and why we talk about them today. And they were still a sect during that day of Jesus. But because the Bible was not specific in calling them out, like they were the Sadducees and the Pharisees and the scribes and the zealots, because one of the disciples was a zealot, and we know that to be true because it is in the Word of God. But there was some allusions to the Essenes in the sense of the parable of the I think of what it's called, the manager, the shrewd manager. So that would be found in Luke 16, and on verse 8 he talks about the children, the sons of light versus the sons of the world, or the children of light versus the children of the world, and it was in reference to their naivety. So what happens is they separate themselves, and now they don't have the knowledge that the children of the world have, the people that are in the world. And so there's this thing that he's saying, look, you need to have some of this shrewdness. You need to be able to use your money, use your wealth, use your influence, use your resources in a way that will benefit you for the future, but not in a way that is deceptive. So he was not a very good manager. The boss knew it. He was like, you're out of here. So he knew he was out of there. So what was he going to do? He was going to use his influence and his ability to, you know, kind of schmooze with the people that owed the master. So he divided and let them pay less than what they had to pay the master back, and so therefore gave him good graces with them, so that when he was let go from the master's employment, he was now able to have an established space where he could work. And because he could not dig dishes, and he was not suitable for other types of work, so he had to keep where he, you know, where his wheelhouse was. And so he was shrewd in his delivery of doing that. And so Jesus commended him for his shrewdness and said, look, you know, children of light, you're being naive. And you need to be a little bit more wise with your dealings with the world. You know, we use unrighteous wealth for righteous purposes. And so, so there's that. All right. I'm going to give you a little example here of unrighteous wealth versus righteous means. And that is, there was a time that I had heard about this single mother who had a lottery ticket. And she became a Christian. And her pastor advised her to throw away the ticket because it is unrighteous wealth. And because it is unrighteous, because it is evil money gained by evil intent, then it was not worthy of being used in a righteous way. It was not holy money. So therefore the ticket needed to be thrown away. She was the winner of the jackpot at the time. I don't know how much it was. And she had thrown the ticket away because it was advised by her pastor that it was evil money. I am not a component of people using their money to purchase lottery tickets as far as a means to get rich quick. That isn't going to happen. I do know a couple of people who have been struck by lightning more than once, and my advice is go buy a ticket. There are times I will join pools that are purchasing tickets, as a lump group together. There are times when my husband and I will buy a ticket. Very rare. Hardly ever. Not in the form of, let's get rich. It's more of a, hey, you can't win it if you're not in it, and somebody's got to win it, eventually. There are times when nobody wins the lottery, and it becomes a bigger jackpot and a bigger jackpot. Do not use money that you do not have for the lottery, because you are not going to win looking at it from a standpoint of, this will solve all my problems. It will not solve all your problems. However, God can totally use unrighteous wealth for righteous purposes. It is the transference of wealth from the wicked to the righteous. And you can't get righteous wealth from the wicked. Well, you can. There are some circumstances where the wicked do have righteous wealth, hard-earned money, or money that was hard-earned by their descendants, or by their fathers and grandfathers and great-grandfathers that came down through to them, and their family may have been righteous, but they are not, So it's a possibility that an unrighteous man will have righteous funds. However, chances are a wicked man will have unrighteous wealth, and that needs to be transferred to the righteous in order for it to be used in a righteous way. And that is my opinion on the subject. All right? That is my opinion on the subject. But don't be buying the lottery ticket thinking that it's going to solve your problems. We do it for fun. We do it for a group effort, to be together at work as a combined force, if you will. Something that is not a gambling addiction. If you are a gambler and an addicted to the gambler, I advise against the lottery. So, that is my subject matter on righteous wealth and unrighteous wealth. And so, I think this is one of those examples where Jesus is saying, hey, there needs to be a transfer of unrighteous wealth to the righteous to make it righteous, because money itself is neither unrighteous or righteous. It is a tool, and you use the tool in the right hands. It's just like gun safety. You have evil people that have guns, and you have righteous people that have guns. And when there is enough guns in the hands of righteous people, there is more safety. That is my subject on guns, because evil people will always find evil means to do evil. Period. They will. All right. And there are people I know that are against guns and don't think anybody should have them. And I know people that are very pro-gun, and I'm pro-gun in the sense of gun safety and helping others with, in case of an emergency against someone evil. Okay, so money is a tool. And that is what Jesus is referring to here. He's saying that, children of light, you're being naive. Children of light, you need to be a little bit more wise with resources, with money, with influence. And so that is the lesson there. And when he referred to children of light, he was more, it's the Essenes considered themselves sons of light. Their teacher was called the teacher of light. And so that could have very well been a reference to their naivety of being exclusive and being separated. And you'll notice that later on, Jesus sends his disciples into the world. He doesn't separate them out of the world. Yeah, there are times when he went off into the wilderness by himself to be alone with God. And there were times, John the Baptist was out in the wilderness, isolated from people. But then he came back into people to baptize them in the River Jordan, to make way for Jesus. So because he was making way for the Messiah, he had to join people. And being in a scene, he separated and isolated themselves. They kept from them. So John the Baptist and Jesus were both wanting to be with people. There were times when they wanted to be separate, yes. But there were times when they knew that the mission was to be with people, because people are the mission. All right. So Essenes, they had this communal living of living by themselves, in a sense of they were all like-minded, and they had these purity rituals and strict adherence to Moses' law, and they believed that the immortality of the soul, that the body was corrupt, but the soul lived on. And so they were vegetarians. They didn't eat meat. They were vegetarians. And they had ritual purification daily. They were so entwined into being cleansed that they were constantly, both inwardly and outwardly, doing the rituals in order to be holy. And they lived separately from the corrupt society, because they didn't want to be corrupted by them. They believed in a double Messiah. They believed that there was going to be a kingly Messiah and a priestly Messiah. So they were looking for two when there was one. Jesus. Jesus is both the kingly Messiah, and in the order of David, he is in the line of Judah and is the rightful king and heir to the throne. He is also in order of Melchizedek, the king priest of Salem, which was Salem meaning peace. And isn't it appropriate that Jesus is the king of peace? So, therefore, under that order of both king and priest. So he did not have to come from the Levitical line. He only had to come from the line of Judah. Remember, Melchizedek was before David. And Abraham tithed to Melchizedek. Abraham lifted up Melchizedek as someone worthy of honor. All right. Yes, Jesus sent his followers into the world. He did not isolate them. The Essenes blessed the bread first and then the wine. They had their community meals where they had these ritual purifications, and then they would have these community meals, and they would bless the bread, and then they would bless the wine. And that was part of their practices. The Pharisees blessed the wine first and then the bread. Now, I find that interesting, since Christians bless the bread first and then the wine. So in that sense, there is Jesus did this twice, where he blessed the bread first and then the wine. You know, we see two examples of him doing that, possibly more. And then, so it shows the influence. There was influence there, both in the way Jesus did things and in the way Christians do things. The things that we can learn, the things that we can learn from them is that we are not to be exclusive. We're not to separate ourselves from the world, is in the sense that we isolate ourselves, right? We don't isolate ourselves. We're inclusive. We come into the world to be a light to the world. We are the light of the world. And without us, the world has no light. So with us being the light of the world, we need to be in the proximity of darkness. What's the point of having a candle lit in a lit room? I mean, we do it all the time nowadays, because it has a scent, an aroma, but you really don't do it for the lighting of the room. You do it for, the scent and the aroma, But to have, you have no electricity. It's important to have light. It's important to have a lamp with oil, or it's important to have a candle that's lit. So we are the light of the world. We are the light in the darkness. And without that light, they don't have light. And so it is important for us to be in the proximity of the world, but not of the world. That in the Essenes purification process and their observance to the law, that there's a lesson that we come close to knowing the Word of God, and that our heart remains pure. It doesn't, Jesus made it very clear, it's not so much the outside of the body as it is the inside. Right? So having that purity of heart and knowing and going deep into the Word of God and studying diligently. That's what that ascetic, studying diligently. It is through that we can learn from the Essenes of both the things that they had done right and the things they didn't do so right. Go in, be the light of the world. Through the studying, through the remaining pure, be a pure light for the world. And that's what we can learn from the Essenes. All right. That is the end of my morning view. Blessings, everybody. Have a great day. Again, if you have not seen the entire series, the Sadducees, the Pharisees, the scribes, the Essenes, next week will be the Zealots. If you haven't seen them all, go ahead and go to YouTube, Mona E. Harrison, subscribe, and go back into those Thirsty Thinking Thursdays where you will find those in the series. All right. Blessings, everybody. Thank you, Jennifer, for watching, and I will see you tomorrow for ta-da! Feisty Friday, the day that so many people enjoy. All right. Blessings, and have a great day.